And George,
Present.
Nate,
Here.
Sarah.
Here.
Okay, all present. I didn't miss anybody, right? All right, so first thing on the agenda is the minutes. Beverly sent them out. Has everybody had a chance to look them over? Is there any comments or changes?
I didn't see any.
Seeing none, I'll take a motion
I'll move that you approve.
I'll second.
in a second. All those in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Brian?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Now, next on our list is actually new business, but I wanted to go over real quick the selectmen's part, and I need a little help from you, Dan, on that, just to go down the 7 things that we talked about at the selectmen's meeting.
Yeah,
The first one I think was received very well, as far as finding ways of taking, paying off some of this coastal infrastructure, the wastewater and the other things. But is there a next step for that? Because we talked about bundling or trying to figure out a way.
yeah, so I'm waiting for some further estimates from Carl Von Hoen on that. So part of the conversation is gonna be, what does that look like? What do we need to do to fund it's probably gonna need some engineering work to get it to the point where you could even generate some sort of construction document on it. But the overall challenge, and it's still kind of evolving right now, is the problem with planning next year's budget. We've been going back and forth with the Department of Revenue last few days about, I don't know if you're aware of it, but there was been another delay or opportunity for businesses to push away the tax liability for meals and all that, sales tax. So what happens on that situation is when we go to build the budget, if you were they're going to tell us how much the business generated. The business just doesn't have to pay the tax now. It's been pushed off till next year. But the problem is, and this is a real issue, is say, and I'm going to just make up the numbers, but say a restaurant, for instance, their tax liability that they deferred was, say, $250,000 or $150,000. And so then we build the budget on the assumption that, well, they're going to have to pay it someday because the state gave you a notice date to say it's May next year. Well, what if that business ends up going out of business? And then it becomes a debt service, and then we're behind the state as it relates to who's in line to get paid if in a bankruptcy scenario. So even though the state may go after them in bankruptcy, A, there may not be any assets worth anything to go after, and B, we're going to stand behind the state, and the state's going to be made whole before they even think about paying us. So that's a real problem we've got as it relates to planning to do anything beyond operating the town, because we have to think long and hard in the next week or so about how we're going to build the budget off that scenario. And I'm frankly right now not really equipped to give you any advice one way or the other. It's just we're trying to absorb that now and what that looks like. I suppose you could back that up with your own cash reserves, right? But that's a risk. All of this is highly risky in this environment. So
The second thing we were in favor of was the wastewater and the reduction of the $100,000.
Yep. So the good news there is RAC voted Monday night to support the 100,000. CPC sent a letter to the board supporting that. We spoke at the meeting last night about putting that $100,000 on the special town meeting for the fall. We also spoke about instituting the WIF for the fall. We also talked about setting up the reserve funds to begin to be able to deposit any funds that come available to us. So the good news there is, with the exception of the DHY agreement, we're going to, it sounds like the board will be supportive of placing articles on the warrant that keep moving that wastewater ball. I also should tell you that we got correspondence from DOT recently that the first part of the Route 28 rebuild is scheduled for 2023 from the Barnstable Town Line to Parkers River Bridge. And that's a pretty substantial section of road. So we've got to be, if we're going to participate with the state on a piping project, we have to get our ducks in a row. And that kicks it off. So once you go down that road and spend money to buy pipes to put in the ground, you're committed to doing something. So.
The second part of that was that we had a 4 in favor, 3 against on considering deferring or looking into deferring the CPA. That did not go over well.
No, that did not go over well. Correct.
I still think that 11.6% contribution from the state is kind of lame and weak, but maybe if it gets down to 5%, we'll revisit it. And
So interestingly, CPC is propped up on registry of deeds receipts, right? And Robert, you tell me, how's the real estate market these days?
awesome.
Yeah, there you go.
Well,
right?
the residential is good. We know that it's very hot.
Yeah.
Commercial? No, there's 100 restaurants on the market right now in Massachusetts.
That's crazy.
You want to buy a restaurant?
No.
Maybe on the chain.
So we can move on to that. Like I said, I hope someday that if I ever need an organ transplant, that the match is not 11.6%. The next one was Emmy Small, and Matakee's putting them together.
Yeah, they like that idea. It's just that we got to work some things through school administration on that. So
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yep.
But, hopefully.
everything here is complicated, right?
Oh, yeah. The next one was, economic growth and year-round residency improvements, like I think you had that fiber optics in there at that time period. That's probably well received too.
Yeah, so actually, interestingly, on an Affordable Housing Trust meeting we had on Tuesday before the Board of Selectmen's meeting, Mary Wagon, who administers the trust, she talked about programming some community development block grant money onto the Route 28 corridor to kick off that process. And also I spoke with Kyle as recently as today to begin getting our $100,000 state grant together to begin deploying the fiber to town buildings. So that project's going. The board seemed to be receptive. And of course, I think everybody would agree that this COVID issue has really highlighted the issue with connectivity and having one provider, if you will,
Stephanie had a question. Should I mute me, Stephanie, so it doesn't hear back? Okay.
We're still gonna have the feedback problem, but Dan, question for you, just in terms of, well, less of a question and more just of a clarification. I think of the committee's intent, certainly in mine,
Stephanie, why don't you come up, because that's gonna drive people crazy.
Okay, if you just turn down your volume, it'll take care of it.
It's not my laptop, so.
Okay.
There's also room A available if Stephanie wants to go in room A, but can't really have two things in one room.
Okay, so just a point of a clarification though, when we're talking about year-round housing production, I felt that there was a little bit of a misunderstanding from at least one of the members of the Board of Selectmen in terms of what that was referring to. That doesn't necessarily mean capital A, affordable housing. Year-round housing production means housing that is naturally affordable to the year-round workforce, and that in many cases is market rate. And that is, a result of appropriate zoning. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I think there was a comment about, it not yielding revenue. And of course, something that you subsidize isn't going to necessarily yield the level of revenue that you're talking about. But if you're talking about just creating a pathway to add, market rate year-round taxpayers, that is going to generate revenue.
Yeah, so I think in general, if I could fill in a little bit more on that, the popularity of a mortgage buy-down program that we have is kind of weighing more favorable to the members of the Affordable Housing Trust, one of which member is also a member of the Board of Selectmen. So to kind of move away from these subsidized unit type construction. So I think to your point that if we would or could entertain on a site of magnitude a market rate development, that clearly would be attractive. There's no question. It's just a matter of based on, from the two projects that we have on 28, that the septic Title V concept was so problematic that they needed a huge public subsidy and then all of these other programs to underwrite it. So I frankly don't know in this economy or anytime in the next 3 years what a market rate development entity would look, or how a pro forma could go on a massive parcel of property that we might have, or some level of parcel. So I think it's worth having it, and the planning board is starting the visioning process. And I'm not sure if you had an invitation yet, but if you haven't, you'll be invited to participate. And I think as we develop the visioning for the town of Yarmouth, that needs to be a critical component for sure. So.
Yeah, and again, just to clarify, when it comes to a big project like that, certainly, you know, wastewater is always going to be a component, but it's also going to be a component on the commercial side as well. And there's not going to be as much of an appetite for commercial development post-COVID as there is for housing, which we're seeing exploding. And the other piece is that year-round market rate housing that's naturally affordable doesn't have to mean a massive development. It can mean just allowing an old manor home to be converted into a multifamily where you're keeping the same number of bedrooms. So it doesn't have to have a wastewater implication. Just want to clarify that and just provide that level of education, because I think sometimes when we talk about these things, if we're not using the same definitions, it can lead to misunderstandings. That's all.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay. The number 5 was, oh, Bruce is here with us today. The 5th one was that we try to get the social services money back to that Board of Health department. And he was nice enough to send us out a list of what he thought was going to be his priorities. So I want to open up to the board if there's any questions anybody has for Bruce and the list that he provided us. And how we, obviously, I think we're still in agreement that the social services money we'd like to get back as soon as possible. So Bruce is here. Is there any questions from anyone regarding the top, was it 7 or 8 items that were?
Want to just explain a couple?
Yeah, you can come up front and talk. Bruce is going to come up and address it.
Very nice, Kyle. Welcome, Finance. Thank you for inviting me here. Before you see the spreadsheet that's of human services that are provided the past number of 5 years that we have up here, that's goes through the Board of Health. And you can see it's about, the total is about 85,000 over the past number of years. The various human services are reviewed each year by the Board of Health, where they come in here for a meeting and they discuss their budget, and then I monitor them through the year. So there is a need in the community. They come in, you can kind of see what they do on the side. And to, as Robert said, to try to break that down, depending on the amount of money or funding that was available, then I could make a decision, or the board could make a decision of where that money could be plugged back in. Right now, we're just seeing them kind of like alphabetically up there. I think when I gave you my cover letter with that, I kind of broke it down a little bit further and said, let me look at prioritizing a little bit if I had a chance, depending on what the money is, where could we put it? And the first thing I was thinking of is we still have an opioid crisis that we need to keep track of. Unfortunately, you know, we work closely with the police department, so we have a feeling of what's going on. And Duffy Healthcare Recovery Support Navigator is a program that we've had for 2 years, working with Duffy. And we had a kind of like a third of a time, part-time direct person that worked with Yarmouth in the recovery support system. Duffy's located right on the Barnstable-Yarmouth line by the Rotary, right by the hospital there. They have a new building. They do a great job. And that was probably my first thing where we should put some money. I'm going to leave you a couple brochures that we have that just talks about what Duffy does. We have a new support person, but we pass these out. We get these out in the community. The police can pass them out. The fire department can pass them out, and people can become aware of their need. Seems to be a lot more need under substance abuse, whether it's opioids or something else. There's, you know, no gatherings of 12-step programs anymore. It's pretty hard to get out there. There's a lot more stress, people staying at home. So to me, that was probably one of the big issues or areas that I would probably put the money towards first. Then I look back after, staying on the opioid questions and just drug education, is we have Gosnold counselors in our school the past number of years at the high school, middle school, where they're available for counseling and working. And it's been successful that we've asked the elementary schools, both of them asked us to send a counselor in at times. So we do get a good feedback on that. How do we start with the Gosnold in the schools now? Some of the kids we were following from last year or during the summer, so they can pick them up on Zoom, so we can at least stay in touch with those children. But as we go forward, they do meet with the counselors at the school, and it is a successful program. We started off partnershiping when I put the Gosnolds in the schools probably about 5 years ago, when the Cape Towns were just working with Gosnold to get counselors in the school for the children. I partnershiped with Ask Dennis if they could put some money in, and the school could put some money in so we could get Gosnold in there. Over the last couple of years, the school has really picked up more of that cost and has put it figured into their budget. So I would be able to take a little bit back. We had been funding them about $8,000. So that could be cut back a little bit based on my priorities. I think that the next one or next two, Council of Churches, Hands of Hope, based out of Howard. Most of the towns contribute to that, various amounts. It's a very active program for residents of the town using that, whether they just get assistance on heating, rent, clothing. They do also run a small food pantry there. We don't give them much, $4,500, but they do a great job on making sure it gets out to the needy residents that we have. And I think the other one that I had put on that we all are considering is the food pantry that does a terrific job in town here with a great need of people throughout the town that use that. And the statistics for the food pantry just increasing, and even more so at this time period. Both the Council on Churches and food pantry look like they might be able to receive some COVID money that the town might have available through Mary Wiggin. And I'm going to meet with her this weekend that if she can pick some of that up off the COVID money that's available through the federal government, we would not need to put that money towards that. We could spend other money available to other programs. The other top one I put kind of rounded out into 5 was the Independence House. Provides assistance for domestic and elder abuse, rape and sexual assault survivors, and school education. Again, the same thing with COVID, people staying in the house more, families closer together, tempers are tight at times, and Independence House has seen a increase since March, and they just do a terrific job, as all these human services do. And when they come in and make their presentation to the boards, it's sometimes it's hard. They do, you don't see that as sometimes all the issues that we have in town when you drive by, but there is a need across the town for these type of services. And Independence House does a great job in a community of service. In the past, we've usually had one of our police officers on their board. So we've always had a great connection with Independence House. So I would like to, we had cut them back a couple years ago, and so I increased them a little last year, but they do a great job. They also reach out to the high school. They work with one of the teachers up there, and they try to have a mentoring program. They've had a couple different ways to go, but they reach out to the high school kids. I just can't say enough for how much Independence House has done well in the community. The independent civil advocate that we have here started out that we wanted to bring an Independence House counselor to the police station, because not everybody could travel to Hyannis. Their facilities right by the Hyannis rink. So we thought if we could bring some of the people that had time traveling is maybe go to the police department. So we had a staff person from Independence House 4 to 5 years at the police station. And that person was able to provide great service and statistics that the police was able to use to get a grant for funding to make that, along with the town, a full-time position. So there was such a need that the police department picked that up through grants and funding. So that's kind of the high ones that I see a need for that I'd like to get back. Not saying the next 9 still don't have a need. They're all very needy. AIDS supports helping AIDS case management that we have people in town. They also put on Narcan training and hepatitis C testing. And as you can see, some of these we don't really give them a lot of money. When we're only giving them $2,000 to $3,000, they give us a lot more service than the money that we give them. Audible Ledger, the radios and services, people come in and read to the blind so they can read, know what's going on. People will come in and read the register to them, or when Cape Cod Times Thursdays come out and the grocery section comes out, they read that so they know what's on sale and what to buy. So that's a great program. We help support them on the special radios they have to buy. Big Brothers and Big Sisters, we have a need within town. There's unfilled slots, and just helping out that program is a program that we all feel worthwhile, along with capabilities, disabilities and rehab services that have workers within the town. Duffy Healthcare, I just left some money in there. We do have that $15,000 for a social counselor for the navigator, but they also do other services. So I just wanted to give them a little extra money that they could put towards their funding for homeless and so forth. Harbor Community Health Center in Hyannis does individual medical and dental services to residents in town. Sight Loss operates out of Dennis for people that need sight assistance. The next one, V&A Expanded Services, are some health programs that we run at the senior citizens, whether that's chair yoga, stretching exercises. We try to partnership with the seniors so they can run some health programs out of the seniors. Right now with the senior center closed, they're hoping to get it back in. I helped a couple times on their meals, grab and grow meals that the seniors were doing this summer with the meals prepared at the high school. And when I was helping pass out the meals, it's amazing the cars come through. They have about 70 that came through each day. And a lot of them would, when I happened to be there, they would say, Bruce, when you're going to start up the programs at the seniors? Well, as soon as we can get inside, we will. We looked at, could we do yoga outside? Obviously, the seniors are still very not as comfortable going outside and going out to different areas. So that's something that we need to look at. But we do work with the V&A to try to run 3 or 4 programs, a couple in the spring, winter, and fall on that, and that they're always well received. A new program, the last one I'll go over, is a new program that we had last year that we didn't really spend any of that money, was $10,000 that Dan was able to recommend that we were able to get in. And we wanted to use that for when we were working, the health department was working with hoarding cases, when we go out to a house that has hoarding and we need to provide counseling. It uses a lot of our time when we're working with that person. Their relatives, hoarding's a tough issue. And what we wanted to do is bring in some nursing assistance for that. We probably have at least in various parts of hoarding, at least 12 around town that we work with from time to time, off and on. You wouldn't know it, but we do get a call from neighbors and people from time to time. And we were hoping that we could provide more assistance. We do have support through the hoarding task self-help group through the seniors that's helping some hoarders, so that's worked out well. We also wanted to do some home visits because with our population, elderly population, a lot of times we want to go in and say, we've got a complaint on the house, but we need to go in and that could have been just a complaint on their trash, or could be a complaint they haven't seen somebody for a while. We go in and talk to the person and just see that they need support services. You know, are they checking with Meals on Wheels? Have they checked with home health care? Somebody needs to go down and sit and make sure they're plugged into the system and follow up with them. So that was a new program. We really didn't get it off, but that's one that we'd like to try to work back in. We also get referrals from that program to from the fire department. They might have gone out to a rescue. A person fell down that they need to help them out or transfer them to the hospital. The fire department will send something to us and say, we were just out at address and either they might have had some hoarding conditions or they have some health issues. Could you work with them? And again, staff-wise, we needed some assistance with that. And I think working with Dan the last couple of years, we were able to put that in the budget last year, but we weren't able to really get that program up and running. But that's one that has a great need to go forward. So that's the quick overview. I hope I didn't rush through it too much because I know you have a long, important agenda. So any amount of money that works its way through would be very grateful, myself, the board, and any of the agencies as you go through your budget to see what's available. And I tried to put our town report in there I gave you to look at, so it had some of a brief background on some of them that you'd have, and also some statistics within our department. We're currently working with Dan now on filling 2 positions that we have open. One is our principal office assistants that took the job upstairs in Dan's office. So it was a good promotion for her. And we're working on Dan on how that's going to be refilled. And we also have a housing assistant intern that was with us last year that we're able to carry on with some of that funding until we go forward. And that housing assistant person intern helps us look for short-term rentals, does inspections. So that's a program, a housing program really pays for itself. It pays for an inspector, a secretary, and will pay for a intern. So that's something we're working with the town administrator on, see how we can go forward with this. So that's the overview where we have within the health department. So if you have any particular questions, that's fine. I can come back to any meeting, or you can just have Rob or obviously the town administrator touch base with me. But if you have some particular ones, let me know. It's hard. They're so worthy, but we need to remember that we still have an opioid crisis that we need to work with, and some of these other services that are important.
I have a comment.
Sure.
Do you mind just turning down the volume?
Neither one of you been able to feel how to shut the volume off of it. I can, why don't you just come over, Stephanie?
So thank you so much. So this is great. Thank you very much. One question, so I guess I'll just sort of say everything out at once so that you can come back and have the chair. This is awkward. First, as far as the Gosnell counselors in the schools, as you know, COVID relates to how the schools are functioning and everything, I just wanted to confirm that they would still be able to provide services, right? I think that's an important thing. And then the second piece is just a comment as far as looking at all of this through the lens of what other resources are, you know, pouring into these buckets of issues. So for example, I know that the state has made quite a bit available in the category of food assistance. There's a decent amount available in terms of rental assistance. It's certainly not enough, but And I think there was, fine. When it comes to like utility assistance, there's been, the federal government has put a ton of LIHEAP money into play that the community action agencies are administering. So I'm just kind of looking at this through the lens of like, what's duplicated and not duplicated, and then where is there a gap. And I would agree generally that making sure that we are not only providing resources for people in the community and in the schools as it relates to substance use disorder, but also supporting the police department so that there's less that they have to deal with, is definitely a critical priority from where I stand. So I would just ask that you kind of look at things through that lens of what other resources are out there, what's pouring into these different, if not these groups, then to the buckets of these issues. I know that there are a lot of food bank dollars going to Harwich, et cetera, that type of thing. Thanks.
I'll sit down and respond to that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to give you my old Dr. Hyde. Okay. Yep. So great questions, and I'll try to wrap them up real quickly. The funding for a lot of these human services come from state and federal, and a lot of them have been reduced. So that forces the human agencies to go out to other private fundraising. They do private fundraising, whether it's a golf funding or golf, things like that, but they ask each town to contribute somewhat. When we ask the agency come to us, we ask out of curiosity, what other towns on the Cape are providing. And some provide a lot more than Yarmouth, some provide a lot less. We're, up and down depending what the agency is. The food pantry, they do get some funding from different state and federal governments. They pick up their food from Boston Food Bank, but there's still people that qualify that need it because they have more people needing it. Yes, people can go to the Harwich Food Pantry. Some people need to go to both places. They can only go back once or so, limited to the food pantry. So it's tough on some of the families. The Gosnold in the schools, I talked to the assistant superintendent today, Ken Jenks, and he said, yes, with Zoom, they're going to be able to work it in and offer that, make sure that program is out there. They can offer it to the kids, like I was saying earlier, that they knew they had last year this summer. How do they, and they'll reach out to the new kids as the kids come into school. And if they stay on at home or Zooming more, they will reach out to as much as they can through teachers or somebody else, peer leadership that might need some assistance. Because sometimes the assistance comes from other students that will help somebody else go forward, at least at the older grades. So that's an area that that works out well. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. I know he's understaffed, so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have him in there now so we can cut him loose. The next thing on our list was Dan was about trying to talk to the assessor's office and seeing if they could release some funds from the overlay. Am I muted? No. Dan, you're muted.
Okay, so we're working on some a report that'll show you how our overlay status relates to all the other towns and cities across the Commonwealth, and we'll get you some data on that pretty quick. And then from there, you can make a recommendation to the board as it relates to how you'd like to proceed. We're going to need to get a little bit of guidance on that at some point during the fall because it would be like a two-step process. The board has to signal that those funds would be okay to consider, and then you'd have to go to the board assessors to have it released. I do know that when we give you that information, we'll give you the present status of tax collections, and they're a little off already. So So I just can't commit to anything one way or the other just yet until we know some more on that detail.
Only that there is a next step and that it's being looked at is
Yep,
appreciated.
absolutely.
That's actually money that we didn't count on. So even 40 grand out of that is actually 40,000 that could go back to Bruce. It
Based
doesn't have to
on what
be-
I'm looking at, Robert, 40 grand I'd take right now.
I'd take anything. I agree. And then the last one was about a poll. And that didn't go over very well either, but I think part of the problem was that I think they thought they brought up the visioning stuff. But that doesn't happen until the end of 2021. And I think what we were trying to do was get a pulse. And that's it, sort of a litmus test. How are people going? Are we about to see more bad news out of you? That type of stuff.
Yeah.
So-
I will tell you that YPD is, they brought to the board last night. They want to do a poll or some sort of, I don't know if I'd use a poll, but some sort of measuring of the community. So the challenge that you have is you've got an idea, the YPD now came up with an idea and we got the visioning process. So one of the things we don't want to do is kind of confuse the public at all that this time. So I need a little bit of further guidance as to how we can pull this off with 3 entities looking to do something to find information from
The Chamber of
public.
Commerce is up doing one too.
I didn't
So,
know. Oh, there you
yeah.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So-
perhaps, maybe we can do a couple of different passive activities associated with it, maybe on the website or through social media. But we just got to give that some thought, because between election mailings, which have been a lot, and the visioning that's going out now and all this other stuff, not sure how much will yield and useful information on that, but we can give it some further thought on that. But I do know the visioning folks are concerned that we're going to kind of mix up a message here. So,
You might, but I don't think we can wait a year and a half
no,
to
I hear you.
get any amount of information out of people as far as, how things are going. I think this,
Yeah.
again, we're just trying to take a pulse.
Yeah,
Visioning is too far down the line to
Big
help
time.
us with what we were trying to accomplish.
right.
So the board knows that the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce did offer to work with us if we wanted to look at their survey and try to put in some wording that we wanted to. I don't know if we will, but I'll keep you informed as that proceeds. And if we want to get involved with that one, then we could. And that was the selectmen's meeting, I think, everything. So now we're back to our regular agenda, which is the first section is actually just scheduling. Everybody pulling out their books and making sure we have ourselves set for the next 10 Wednesdays or so, Dan?
Yeah, it sounds like that's a date,
Should we start thinking that actually next week we're going to be bringing people in?
That's
Clear for that?
probably not a bad idea because between now and I want to say 3rd week of October, we've got some pretty significant decisions to make as it relates to what would be brought forward to town meeting. So the sooner you get to know everybody and what's their challenges, the better off we'll all be.
Does anybody on the board have a problem writing in the, all the way to the 3rd week of October every single Wednesday for 6 o'clock? I'm not seeing any negatives. I'm sorry.
I just might be absent next week. I have a procedure in Boston, that's all. So I don't know if I'll be home, but
We're
That's the other
pretty good. We're pretty good on quorum, so we can still have meetings because we only have to have 4. Anybody else say anything? That's obviously the worst. The longer it gets into the calendar, the harder it would be to miss a meeting, George.
Yeah, and I would also offer to you that we'll try to keep everybody, be respectful of everybody's time and keep these pretty quick down to like an hour or something or so, so it's not a huge suck on your effort on.
I asked Dan to bring us a couple easy underhand softballs to begin with.
Yeah.
Are you
And save a little bit towards the end.
Are we,
So-
did you want us to book out through the 14th or the 21st?
I think, why don't we just go to the 21st, right?
I go to the 21st, yeah.
Go to the 21st. Okay. After that, B and C I'm going to take together because about a year ago, they changed the membership of the finance committee to be as big as 9. We're sitting with 7 right now. That vote was a 3-3 tie. And even though we had 7 members, we didn't re-vote it at all. So I'm asking this group, what are your feelings? Are we more the merrier, or is it let us get our footing before we start bringing on new members? And again, I'm open to thoughts. You don't have to, but I'd like to send a message up to, I think Ken is still interested in growing it to 9. And I think so maybe is the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, but can't say that for sure. I was not in favor of it because I think 7's a perfectly good sized board. But Brian, did you want to? Well, I know Sarah, but I wanted to finish up. You're all set?
To know, we have it at 7 right
Mhm.
now. Can we just keep it at 7? Is there an active search for 2 additional members?
That's
Or
my,
was it
that's what,
just- Was it just perhaps if that ideal candidate popped?
no,
up?
they're pursuing to try to get it to 9 is my understanding. And that's kind of why I wanted to say, do we have an opinion on that? And yes, Sarah, I'm recognizing you.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm gonna piggyback on that. First of all, Dan, do we actually have any interest?
I haven't checked the talent bank yet, and nobody's reached out to me as an individual to join on. You know, I haven't heard from any members of the board or from Ken on that topic, so I can't really comment on that.
The other thing, like, I mean, I believe I was in the, well, it was a 3-3, so I remember that I voted against it as well. But because of the point that like when FinCom got really popular, everyone wanted to do it, and then we were gonna have trouble getting up to the amount of people that we actually needed. I think that was our reasoning, but I just logistically, can we do what is being asked right now? Because the town is the one who voted to expand this to 9. So can we actually limit it? Is that something we can even do?
It's between 7 and 9 is the way it was written. So
Okay.
it doesn't say to be 9, it says between 7 and 9, correct,
Okay.
Dan?
Yeah,
All right, I just want
So
to,
we're okay with 7. That's why I'm saying I'm just trying to set up the opinion of what do you guys want me to send up? Ken, we want more people. Let's build this thing to a 9-member board, or let us get our breath for a little while. And if somebody comes up that really wants to join, then we'll address it then. Because I can send the message that we want you pursuing it to 9.
my opinion is keep it at an odd number. So that's about as much as I will. Yeah.
Anybody else, any thoughts? I mean, you want to do it as a good judge?
Yeah, I'm the one for which they increased it. So let me speak to the reasons why we should probably try to achieve the 9. I agree with Sarah. We want to keep an odd number. I think it encourages participation on the part of citizens. So unless someone could give me a better reason for having 7 than 9, I see no reason to frustrate getting there. If we can encourage people to apply, I think that's good, but I don't want to frustrate people to not apply. The more, the merrier. The more people that participate, the better we act as a town. And I don't think we should be putting obstacles in the way of people.
Term limits.
I'll take the opposite side of that, George, in that all my studies say that a 9-member board is less efficient and it gets to get unwieldy.
Would you name one of those studies, please?
Definitely, but not right this second, but I will send it to you over, because I did that before the last time. I actually brought in.
Well,
studies.
as I recall, you quoted
Studies.
something out of the Wall Street Journal. I don't find the,
Jack has a comment, by the way.
Shut down.
Jack is saying they rolled it back when they couldn't get 9 for, I guess, for quite a while. So, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I actually thought this would go really much faster. So you want to just do a show of hands of more the merrier. And if it turns out to be kind of a deadlock again, then we'll just let it work its way out. Oh, what? I'm sorry.
So my question for Dan is, what was the quorum issue then? Where are we at now?
We have 7 members now. We have a quorum requirement of 4. If we went to 9, we'd still only have a quorum of 4 needed, is my understanding. Is that right, Dan?
I would have to pull up the charge on that because that speaks to that language. I'll see if I can find it quickly. Keep going though.
So if we,
Robert,
Jack is, go ahead.
I think if you want to stay with 9, we need 2 volunteers at the same time. We can't get the even number. In other words, if we only get one person that wants to come aboard, we have to wait until we get a second so we don't have an even number for voting.
I understand that. Well, you know, I'm not getting a feeling of a consensus, so I would just leave it then. If we get 2 members that want to join that are qualified and interested, and then we address that when it happens.
I think that's the way you ought to.
Okay, I'm good with that. The second part of that was that we had a policy, unwritten, of course, but on how we would address ourselves in town meetings and things. One of them was that, like, for example, under that one, I was actually going to go up and talk to it. But if I was going to do that, I would have to go up to the public podium and do that. And then the other policy we also had was the same thing, that if we were going to do some type of personal comments, that we would do that at the public podiums, at the part where it says open for public speaking. Now, is that a policy that we want to change, or does anybody have a thought on, is that a good policy? Is that something? Because I'm new. I want to know what you guys want.
I think that you ought to speak as an individual from the podium if it's an individual feeling, and if it's a FinCom policy thing or something, then the chairman and maybe one member should speak from the table. But I don't think you should take, I don't think you should intermix the two. That's just my personal feeling.
Any other thoughts from any other members?
I would agree with Nate. You know, if there's something we've acted on as a board, then the officers of the board should speak to that. So that would be the chairman, it would seem. If there's an issue that an individual, either because it's in conflict with the decision of the board, or it's just their own, you know, little hobby horse they want to talk about, then they should separate themselves from the board and discuss it as if they were just another member of the town meeting or whatever other group that they're speaking to.
It's not, as I said, it was never a written policy. It was just, we talked about it and we thought it was a etiquette thing that we would try to continue to do. But if you don't want that, then you should say that, because that's the way we treated it in the past.
Well, just from my personal opinion, I do think that if someone wants to get up and say their dissent in their individual capacity, which is something that we've always encouraged as a board, that it's important that we allow that person to speak in that capacity and that we respect their ability to do so, because any kind of a policy, written or unwritten, that limits someone's speech kind of gets up against the First Amendment, and we really don't want to be getting into that.
Yeah,
So-
sorry, we're not changing anything that isn't already in our minutes. I mean, when we open meetings with people in meetings, there's a part where that says public comment. We're just treating ourselves as public in that instance, and not treating ourselves as finance committee members at a different time period in the meeting. So I think that's all I'm saying is if we're going to make a personal comment, it should be done during the first part of the meeting where it says public comment. Or if it's town meeting, we should make sure we identify ourselves by going down to the podium of the public and doing that. You don't agree with that?
No, what I'm saying is that we shouldn't be making any policy that limits someone's ability to speak in their
We already
capacity.
have that, Sarah. We have that. The whole town does that all the time. Every single meeting, basically, Vita only has one chance to stand up and make a comment. Why would we treat ourselves any differently when we're talking as personally? That's all I'm saying. I think we should obey the regulations, the rules that are set in place, which is that's when they allow for public comment.
Well, I think Sarah raised another issue, though. What if there's dissent on the board or a difference on the board? So what if we vote 3-2 and so somebody speaks for the majority opinion, and there should be an opportunity for somebody to speak for a minority. And so
That's fine. If that's the policy, that's going to be fine, and we'll continue with that. That's fine. That's why I'm saying that's what you want to do. Then we'll do that when we do public meetings. We'll do a pro and against for every single thing that we bring up and vote for. So if it's a 7-1, 6-1 vote, the one person can get up and make their statement. I'm all right with that
They don't have to, only
if they choose to.
they choose to,
All right.
which they should be allowed to.
I think this is our forum for discussing and debate and deliberation. When we get in front of the public, I don't think we should be still debating. The committee made its vote. We should support the committee on its vote. I'm not saying you can't make your personal statement, but the committee heard the arguments and it made its vote. We should support the committee with its decision and not, minority votes should not try to reverse the decision publicly when they had their opportunity to make their case in this forum.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just say, working in politics, in any other deliberative body, there's a majority opinion and minority opinion, whether that's, the U.S. House of Representatives or the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court or what have you, there's an opportunity. Generally, you wouldn't have more than one voice representing each. And I don't know that it's necessarily going to be ultimately that frequent, but particularly if there's a close vote, like a 4-3 vote or something like that, I wouldn't want to create a policy that precludes the possibility of representing that perspective because it could be a particularly important perspective.
I'm asking if the board wants to do it that way, then I'm 100%. I'd like the idea because I'm quite often in the minority. So
I think that's what the board is saying, is that if there's a split vote, that the minority and majority get a chance to speak to it. Because I also don't think that going up to the podium before the board has even presented is necessarily the most appropriate means of doing it, because that just will confuse everybody for something later on. If we're having a discussion on a particular topic and we have a split vote on it, the way to avoid, avoid confusion would be to allow both sides to speak at that time.
I'd like to go back to what our purpose is. We're not a decision-making body, we're an advisory body. So if we have a difference of opinion among the members, it would be beneficial to the town to hear those differing opinions. So that I don't see why we wouldn't just have somebody speak for the committee, however we voted, the majority, and then if there's a minority opinion that needs to be communicated, it would benefit the town as they deliberate based on our advice. They know both sides of the issue as we've at least framed it for them.
I'm perfectly happy with that idea. I just want to make sure that that's the consensus.
Like going to your point, Robert, with the 9-7 split for FinCom, we remember that Ken, we did say that we didn't take a position on it, but Ken was able to speak to both sides of it. Had we had the questions, so that I think that's just really important that we're able to explain both sides of why we might have a 4-3 vote when the discussion is happening, or a 2-7 vote or a 1, whatever.
Agenda-wise, I have to make sure that that's the way we're going to do it, and that's fine, because when we present to the selectmen the next time on any articles that we have, we'll have one person present the way the board voted, and then if there's someone else that wants to come up and talk to the other side, then we'll welcome that person up to do that. But I'll set it up that way ahead of time. Okay?
Well, I think you got an issue here of separating apples and oranges. Majority vote is what you present to the public. A minority vote might be an individual's minority vote and not the minority vote of the committee. And I don't think it belongs at the public forum at the town meeting.
I agree too, but But the committee doesn't want to go that way, then there's
You know,
nothing
if
I
I
can do
vote
about it.
against something for one reason and you vote against it for something else, you can't speak for me, then I'm gonna want to speak at the.
I
If we're
understand.
gonna do that, we should do it at the public forum, public microphone.
I think that generally what you're gonna have is you're gonna have a recreation of every single one of our meetings in public. And that's okay, but I don't think it's wise. But if that's what the board wants to do, that's literally what we'll be doing,
Is
which
there
is,
any precedent in this?
no, the way we did it before, the precedent was the way we did it before, which is we
It's been
didn't
that
bring up
way-
the negative.
It's been that way for 10 years that I'm aware of.
Yeah, we didn't bring up any of the minority issues other than to do it personally. Anywhere else? Any other comments? Nate? No? Do I want to have a motion and we'll actually make it official?
No, I don't think I don't think that a written policy like that's a good idea.
It's not a written policy. It's a policy that says that we will
It would be-
encourage,
It would be written if it goes in the minutes.
yeah. So we want to have no policy at all when it comes to how our etiquette and what we do when we go to public
I think
meetings.
it's up to the
That is, there's an understanding that if the minority wants to talk, that they will be presented, they will have the ability to speak, and they should probably all get together and decide together what they're gonna say to go to Jack's point so that we don't recreate every meeting. If they want that opportunity, it's not even saying that the minority will want to, it's just if they choose, they want to.
Not passed. So we're back at minority and majority do a presentation if they want to.
I just think if it hasn't arisen before, probably won't, or maybe it does, but seldom will it become an issue. in the future.
I'm getting the opinion that what I'm hearing is that's the way they would like to do it. Stephanie, I believe, is saying that the minority should have an opportunity. Sarah's saying the minority should have an opportunity.
Right.
I think George said that Sarah, this minority. I personally think, again, it's going to look like we're recreating our meetings at a selectmen's meeting or in public forum. I think once the vote, I've always treated that once the vote was done, I supported the board in the best way I could.
Right. But I don't think a minority has tried to bring this to the forum. I don't think we've done this before. I don't think anybody's really been so adamant like, hey, I need to speak about this.
And if they did, they would do it.
I mean, since I've been here, it's we've had split votes, but
It has happened. It has happened.
Present.
It has happened, and it has happened fairly recently. And so that's why I'm trying to figure out what the board,
has
how you want me to.
happened.
Yes,
Right.
it has happened recently. I'm avoiding that conversation.
Okay. Fair enough.
So nothing, no vote, no direction.
I think it's a solution to the problem. I don't see it. I think
No, see, that's not the case, is it? All right, moving on. Dan, I guess we've got nothing there. So whatever happens at a meeting in the finance committee will be exciting and interesting because we won't know what it's going to be like until it happens. Dan, you had one thing on the agenda, I think, financial reporting.
Yeah, you're muted.
I had Kyle, I sent him the charge. If you wanted to see the charge, I'll send it out to you by email, but it's right there. And you're good with 7 members or 9. So it's kind of your procedure to go through. There was, I think if I remember correctly, there was commentary. The quorum would just be a majority of the members present. So, if it's 7, it's 4, and then 9, then you'd be at 5. So there was a little bit of conversation about writing that within the charge, as I recall, but they decided to leave it based on how many members are in the room at the time. So as long as you have a majority. So I'll send that out to you tomorrow.
Dan, we're up to your part of the financial reporting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to let everybody see that. So I have Andrea Turkelson on the line here. Andrea's been retained by the town to assist in financial reporting. We're going through a little bit of financial change here with some personnel. You guys were all used to Rich Bienvenu and whatnot. And so Andrea will be picking up some of the forecasting ball for that. So she's with us. Andrea comes with us with many, many years of municipal experience in communities outside of Boston. So I think she's asked for inputs. She has a town email. So if anybody has any specific desires as to how they want to see metrics presented to them, she can help and assist with that effort. So I know some of you looked at the DLS document that came out a little while ago and liked to have reporting done on a monthly basis on that level. So we're just here to try to get you the information in the format you want to see it on a regular basis.
Welcome, Andrea, and congratulations on the new position.
Great to be here, and I look forward to assisting the committee in the next several weeks at least. So glad to be here. I have taken a look at the monthly financial report to get an idea of what you're used to seeing every month. And as Dan mentioned, there's a lot of great metrics and financial tools that the DLS has been doing a lot of work with for the last few years. But I do want to be respectful of your time this evening. I have been doing some work with some sort of dashboard style charts and graphs, since there is a lot of data that you have on a monthly basis, rather than producing many charts to go along with the very long financial reports, whether you're talking revenues and particularly expenses. The dashboard allows you to sort of slice things as you want. So we can bring in the data that you want to look at on a regular basis and allow you to sort of manipulate that view within the meeting. So I'd love to open things up to get some comments from the committee. Happy to work with individuals and go through the chairman to see what types of things you might have some interest with. Happy to go through any of the DLS dashboards and data sets with the committee at a future meeting, and certainly on an individual basis if you'd like to poke around there and get some ideas on what might better assist you in the coming months.
Andrea, first of all, welcome. But I would personally like to see the DLS financial indicators templates. There's about 12 of them.
Yes.
And for the most part, I see those as annual data, but I think it might be, we'll have to experiment with this, but try to take the flow information and maybe, convert that to annual numbers, but look at the stock information, as it is at that point in time, and use that as some sort of indices, that's what they're intended for, to see what our overall, liquidity is in the town and what our degree of separation from insolvency might be. So that to me would be an important thing to see on a regular basis. That's what our job is, to assess the financial health of the town.
Certainly, and the indicators, on a fiscal year basis, it's a great tool as you work toward your budgeting and planning every cycle. The other nice thing that you have from the DLS would be an opportunity to set up a set of comparables. So certainly there'd be a lot of information, data points that you'd want to look at across the Cape, and looking at your the other 14 communities. And in some cases, if we're maybe talking about wastewater and combining forces with Dennis and Harwich, there's some other things that we can do to do some comparisons there to see how things might be allocated and looked at on an ongoing basis. So, you know, there's some great comparable data that we can pull together, as well as having different years to look at for trending to see how Yarmouth is doing in different areas.
Andrea? Nate Ladley. One thing that I'd like to see as we get into this budgeting process is pre-COVID versus now, how much we're down in items. Dan talked about the taxes can be put off for next year. Okay, how much does that really take out of the budget? How many people haven't paid their taxes this year versus last year? Where does that put us? You know, all these near-term things as we go through, and we may find out that we're down $5, $6, $8 million. You know, I mean, and we're going to go through and we're going to, like Bruce wants 85,000. Okay, that's just a small, maybe small potatoes, but because, you know, the DPW, the police, the fire, all those, they're big numbers. And if we're down a sufficient amount of money, we're going to have to go to them and say, hey, we just don't have it, and here's why. You know, in other words, how much is in our checkbook? Okay, thank you.
Thoughts or comments? Oh, Stephanie has something.
I'm just not sure, not having seen many of these reports, but if you're able to match it with where we should be for the year, that's another thing, not just where we are compared to last year, but where we are for that point in the year. That's another piece that's important.
Did you get that, Andrea?
I didn't. I did kind of cut out at the end. Excuse me.
Want to send it to her tomorrow?
Sure.
Because I was going to do the same thing. I was going to just send you a couple emails tomorrow and work with me a little bit on some of the numbers. I appreciate that.
Sounds good.
Nobody else? So Andrew, we're all set. Dan, the next thing on our list is transfers.
I do have one. I'll bring it down to you after the meeting. It's from the general legal account. That's the account that we use for town council to transfer the sum of $5,000 to the legal bargaining account. That's the account that we use to pay the lawyers that assist us with labor relations and collective bargaining. We are in a contract cycle, negotiation cycle with the police. They have 2 unions. We've had a number of other employee-related legal activities that have occurred that have had us use legal bargaining a little bit more than we would normally do in an off-cycle year. So it's a $5,000 request to go from that, from like general legal to legal bargaining.
Open up to any questions for Dan? I'm seeing none. I'm looking for a motion.
Move it be approved.
In a second.
Second.
Roll call vote. Brian.
Aye.
Jack.
Aye.
Stephanie.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Nate.
Aye.
George.
Right.
Aye. Myself. Unanimous.
Great, thank you.
I don't have anything under FinCom administrative items. Dan, I don't know if you have anything else.
I don't, I'm good. Actually, one thing I will say though, I would think would be helpful on the conversation, I think Nate was asking about, we'll get in the habit as part of the monthly reports, like on the first meeting of the month, to share with you like a 1-pager, like what's in the bank account, the key fund balances that we sometimes lose track of because we don't bring it up all that often, but it, you know, the different stabilization accounts, free cash and all of that kind of stuff. So that's a good idea. That just keeps all that right in everybody's front of their mind every month. So.
Unless somebody else has something, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Sarah's turn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Roll call vote. Brian.
Aye.
Jack.
Aye.
Stephanie.
Aye.
George.
Aye.
Nate.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. We hang up.